All right, so this one is titled Through It All, I Put My Trust in Him. And it's the hardest things that I've gone through, or the hardest thing that I've had to experience in so far in life. um, Through it all, I put my trust in Him. I gave it my all. It's the only way I got through 2022. Almost 8 years ago, I became a Christian, a term that is used very flowing. Everyone we come across is a Christian. Years after confessing Jesus as my Lord and Savior, I began to learn what it means to actually be a Christian. How being a Christian and being a Christian can be so different. In 2021, we took a challenge at church to go all in for God. This simply meant to go all in all that we did. Mind you, we had already been living a pretty decently life for Christ, we thought, but there were rooms in our hearts that we hadn't given all to Him. At the beginning of 22, we gave a lovely testimony of how making a few additions to our walk with God really changed 2021. Our first half of 2022 was absolutely fabulous. Our marriage, business, children, and life were going oh so right. And it made 2021 an absolutely amazing year. But then June, June 22 happens. On June 12th, we got a call that Angel died in a motorcycle accident the night before. Those gut wrenching, heartbreaking words no mother should ever have to hear. He was in a head on collision with a car and died on impact. Our worlds came to a halt. How could it be? My boy was only 25. He still had his whole life ahead of him. He was healthy. He was strong. He was prayed for. He was also loved. How could it be I won't be able to see him marry? How could it be I won't be able to have his grandchildren? How could it be that I won't be able to see him grow old and redeem his life? How could it be? I have lived a very hard knock life. I was a high school dropout, teen pregnancy. I had Angel when I was 17. I was in an abusive relationship. I was in and out of homes, no stability. It was a rough beginning. And not an upbringing because I was already outside of my house. So this was all stuff that, I brought upon myself basically. Losing my son this past couple of months ago ranks up on the hardest things I've ever had to live through. Losing my son is actually the second hardest thing I've ever had to live through. Do you know what's hardest for me in 2022? Most people would be like, well, what's harder than losing your son? Losing my son has been the most emotional thing I've ever experienced in my life. But it was harder to be a Christian through all of this. To trust in my God during the most excruciating pain I have ever felt. That was harder. To rely on His strength, even for the simplest things like breathing, that was harder. To rely on His word for comfort when all I could hear was so much hate around me. To share Him with those around me so they wouldn't break down. It was so much harder for me to walk in faith, to trust in Him, to simply believe. That was harder than losing my son. One thing we can all probably agree on is being a Christian is hard. It's like really, really hard. Keep in mind, that has been the hardest thing ever. Praying, walking in faith, and speaking the word in every breath I took, all while I couldn't breathe because of the physical pain that I felt in my heart. All the while, I couldn't think clearly because the images of my son's lifeless body flying through the air as he was ejected from his motorcycle. All while trying to find the right time to travel and bury him. All while running a business. All while trying to survive. I think I may have just experienced what the world may consider the hardest thing a parent will ever have to do, burying a child. But I found it harder to wake up and not doubt my God. To count it all joy when I walked through burying my son and my father-in-law within 2 weeks of each other. To love through the hate. To stand firm on His foundation when my life was shaken, rattled, and turned inside out. Christianity isn't easy. It's really the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I did it. I stayed the course. I stayed all in. I counted it all joy. I literally prayed my life my way through June. And one of the biggest ways I went all in for God during this past season was by serving. Our pastor teaches us serving allows us purpose beyond our pain. I took it literal and added that following to my purpose. It has been our prayer for our children to know God and to be saved, even though they are in the world and living in the world. My fervent prayer availeth much. I know that someone somewhere ministered to my son and his salvation was attained. That I know because I delight myself in him and he gives me the desires of my heart. Any doubt? Look at my life. Just look all around me. Look at how the Riveras are living. And especially more so, those that knew us before the people in Tennessee. Those that knew us before the people in Palm Coast. Those that grew up with us. Look at us. There's no way that you can deny the power of God and his hand over our lives. And then try to look at me. He wouldn't have given me the most important thing. Exactly. I trust in him. I believe in him. This is what walking in faith looks like. Oh, and have you seen my shoes? I walk in the most fabulous shoes. All for his glory. All because that's what he does for us. So because of that opportunity that someone somewhere provided to Angel, I knew I had to be able to serve. I had to be available to serve others so that another person can be saved and have eternal salvation. Now let me tell you what the result of staying all in was. Peace. Do you know what it's like to be able to sleep at night after a tragedy? Most don't. I was asked time and time again, how could I eat and sleep after my son had passed? But there was a peace. There was a peace that surpassed all understanding. Love. It was a love like no other. One with grace, comfort, understanding. A love that held me. A love that sat with me. A love that hugged me. A love that traveled with me. A love that didn't leave. Grace. This one was huge. While I couldn't smile, others smiled to me. Others smiled for me. While I couldn't be kind, others were kind to me. While I struggled to be myself, others understood and were faithful to me. The grace, I'm still walking on so much of it today, and it's just all him. Joy. There is joy in everything. I find it knowing Angel is walking those streets of gold. He doesn't have to fight against the world. He doesn't have to fight against sin. There's no sickness. There's no suffering. There are no temptations to overcome. No pain to endure. He is where we are waiting to go. He is now surrounded by a heavenly court and a place of love, peace, and worship. That's what, as Christians, we are all waiting to go there. And he's there. The strength. His strength carried me. Some have had to carry this burden on their own. I didn't. His strength allowed me to breathe. Strength allowed me to sleep, walk, talk, cry, and worship. Going all in for God allowed me to have his all during the most trying time of my life. Going all in gave me hope. Gave me the hope when all could have been lost. It gave me wisdom and understanding. It gave me a peace that can come no other way. He fought for me when I couldn't. He led me and directed my steps when I couldn't stand upright. His faithfulness has allowed me to grow in ways I never thought possible. Death has a way to make you appreciate life. I feel like I'm still in survival mode at some times. I am still living on that grace God has laid out. Some days are better than others. Some days I just want to sleep away, but I don't because I have a purpose. And if I don't step up, someone else's son may not have the opportunity to have eternal salvation. That's it for today. I hope it makes a difference in your life. Love you.